And the first category, a polytheistic perversion of Christianity, is Mormonism. This may surprise some of you. It surprises Mormons who come to my door. I kid you not. I have often, when they come, I always invite them in. Sure, I'd love to talk about religion. Come on in. Can you stay a while? And they'll sit down. You always let them speak first, give their nice little spiel. And I'll say, well, but I have problems with you. You all are Mormons, right? You forgot to mention that, but that's okay. Okay, you're Mormons. The problem I have is this idea that there are many gods. And I've actually had, on a number of occasions, people say, we don't believe that. I'll say, well, sure, you do. No, we don't believe that. I say, well, excuse me, I'm going to get my Book of Mormon. Come back. I say, and don't you also hold to the Pearl of Great Price? Oh, you do? Okay. And the Doctrines and the Covenant? Okay. Go and get their 3 big books, big in the sense of authoritative books. And then you point out all these polytheistic passages. Now, this is shameful because I'm doing their homework for them. But I want you to know Mormonism, according to its own authoritative documents, teaches there are many gods. I remember two young ladies that came by and were shocked when I said that. And I pointed out and they said, well, we're going to go ask about that. We'll be back. And I said, please do come back. And they did come back in a couple of weeks. And then they came in as though this is some great revelation and this solved the problem. They said, okay, well, we do believe there are many gods, but there's only one God for this universe. Well, big deal. So there's only one God. That's, by the way, called henotheism. The idea that you worship only one God, but there are many out there. And all sorts of problems with polytheism can be brought up. But you need to know that Mormons often are not even aware of their own theology. Okay? Let's ask, what do Mormons say the relationship is between the Bible and the Book of Mormon? Do they reject the Bible? Some of you may already know. No, they do not reject the Bible. They say that God revealed all these books that we consider biblical, and that a number of years later, Jesus made a revelation of himself to the Indians of North America, and from this we get the Book of Mormon. So they see the Book of Mormon as an additional revelation to the Bible. Okay, what does the Bible tell us then is the judge or the standard of judgment for additional revelation. That is, since they grant the Christian worldview, they'll say it in words, ultimately they don't really, but since they will say the Bible is authoritative, you say, okay, well then we can look at the Bible for the standards of additional revelations as they come. And one of those standards is further revelation cannot contradict what God has said previously. If a prophet comes to you and he says, follow after other gods that you have not known and so forth, or as the apostles say, if somebody comes to you and says that Jesus is, that the Messiah has not come in the flesh and so forth, then you're to reject that alleged further revelation. So this is a biblical standard. They say they're committed to the Bible. That means they are committed to judging the Book of Mormon by previous revelation. You all with me? So now all you need to do is show that Mormon theology in the Book of Mormon, Pearl of Great Price, and so forth, is in conflict with the Bible. A good place to start is whether there's one God or many, by the way. And there are any number of other things, because this always happens. Time is short. I can't give you all the illustrations I might. But you go through and show contradictions. By the way, Mormons believe some rather strange things, not just that there are many gods. You realize that Mormons believe that Adam was a god. Now you're probably thinking, they're not going to sit down and take that just that easily, Dr. Bahnsen. And no, they aren't. Because now you're going to find out that what they meant when they said they accept the Bible is they accept the Bible as it's properly interpreted and translated. And when the Bible is properly interpreted and translated, then they say it is consistent with the further revelations, like the Book of Mormon and the Pearl of Great Price. Now what are we going to do? You're going to say, well, how do we know that you have a proper translation of the Bible? You need to ask Mormons for documentary evidence for their translation of the Bible. Because you have to understand, it's not a matter of how you take a particular Greek or Hebrew word here and there. Their rewriting of the Bible is pretty amazing. In Genesis 3 in the Mormon Bible, Satan offers to God to redeem mankind. That doesn't look like just a semantic difference on a few words in Hebrew. That looks like somebody's added something to the story. In Genesis 6, Adam is baptized by immersion in the Mormon Bible. Again, I don't think that's just the translation of a few Hebrew words. Something gives here. There's a long prophecy by Enoch given in the book of Genesis that we don't have in our book of Genesis at all. We learn in the Mormon Bible that man's ability to propagate sexually rests on his fall into sin. That's why men are now able to make babies. And amazingly, in the 50th chapter of Genesis in the Mormon Bible, we have a prediction of the appearance of someone called Joseph Smith. Well, I think it's a little understatement to say, isn't that a little too convenient? And so you're going to have to say, we need some manuscript evidence for this. You know how much they will give you? Exactly zero. There is no manuscript evidence for this. They will say that the Book of Mormon must be trusted because the prophet of God, Joseph Smith, gave it, and if he endorsed this translation, then you must endorse it as well. That is the translation of what you call the Bible. Well, so let's ask about the Book of Mormon then. You all know the story of the Book of Mormon? What is the Book of Mormon? What was it like? Well, it was written according to Mormons, according to the book itself in chapter 9, verse 32, in Reformed Egyptian, the language of Reformed Egyptian. Now, we, as scholars of language, don't have any examples Reformed Egyptian. And so we've got to take their word for it, that it was written in a language that no one else knows about. Now, in chapter 9, verse 33, we read that Hebrew would have been a more perfect script to write the Book of Mormon on these plates, but the plates were not large enough for the Hebrew script. And so it had to be done in Reformed Egyptian. Of course, that does make you kind of ask, why didn't God make the plates bigger? So that he could have used the more perfect language of Hebrew that other people could have read. We have no record of writing on metal plates from antiquity, yet they claim the entire Old Testament was once put on brass plates about 600 BC. Many changes have been made in the Book of Mormon after its original translation, although Mormons tell you that it was translated infallibly and inerrantly. Joseph Smith did the translation with the and Thummim, or so we're told. But we don't know what the and Thummim were in the Old Testament, and he did it behind a sheet, and no one could watch him. He called out these things, and his friend was supposed to write them down. Now, Mormons will tell you they were written down, and then the plates were taken with the translation to an expert, Dr. Anton in New York, so that he could confirm the Reformed Egyptian translation. Now, Dr. Anton, when he heard they were making these claims, swore that it never took place, and he never said that, and he said there is no such thing as Reformed Egyptian. Well, chapter 9, verse 34 of Mormon says that no other person on earth knows Reformed Egyptian. Well, if no other person on earth knows it, how could Dr. Anton have done what he was said to have done? You see, the story just doesn't hang together. There's all this arbitrariness and inconsistency and so forth. And so, it comes down to this. Mormons will tell you, I've had this happen many times as they're at the door getting ready to leave. Well, I just trust Joseph Smith, and if you pray about it, you will too. Does that sound subjective to you? In the end, the refutation which is biblical, the refutation which is internal, that are inconsistencies, the refutation that comes from their own false claims, they finally want to override that with, but I've got faith in Joseph Smith. And so now, the final thing you need to know about Joseph Smith is we have the court records from this. Joseph Smith was convicted in Bainbridge, New York, before he became the prophet of God, of glass looking. You ever heard that expression? You know what a glass looker is? In the 1800s, there were people, charlatans, what we today call con men, who went around putting a glass, a rounded piece of glass, in a hat or something, putting his face in the hat and claiming to see buried treasure or where a well could be found or something like that. And some people were stupid enough to pay him to do that sort of thing. And finally, he was brought to court and convicted of being a con man. And so when Mormons are leaving, having said, okay, well, there are all these problems, but if Joseph Smith is the prophet of God, you need to trust him, then I finally say, yes, and you need to know that before he became the prophet of God, he was a convicted con man.